Shalom Aleichem. Today we'll be learning Daf Tzadik Tes Amud Aleph. So we'll go back to the last line of Tzadik Tes Amud Beis. Tonu Rabbanon. The Rabbanon taught in Hebrews, Charutzim hoyu kroshin, v'chalulim hoyu ha'adonim. The kroshin of the Mishkan that we spoke about at length yesterday, that there was 20 on the north side, on the length side, 20 on the south side, and then 6 on the western side, and another 2 in each corner. So each beam at the bottom would have to fit into the adonim, the socket, and in order for that to happen, you have to have that the base of the keresh would be carved out with a protruding point in the middle, and then that would be able to fit into the socket. An example for that would be, would be something similar to this over here. So you have over here, let's say this would be the adonim. So they're carving out around the wood, and then so you've got a protruding part, or better like this over here, like this over here. So they would carve out in the middle and around the adonim, and both sides. Like this you have these 2 type of protrusions or peg or type of sticks coming out, and then it would be able to fit into the adonim, which is like this over here, fitting in. All right. Now, and the pegs, the hooks that were going across on the holding together the tapestries, which we also mentioned yesterday at length. That be a very brief summary. That the Mishkan was made up of 10. The lowest covering was made up of 10 tapestries, and they were made up of 5 units. 5 on one side, 5 on the other side, which each of those 5 units was sewed together, and as a unit of 5, and then a second unit of 5 sewn together, and then they would take each now of those 5 and put them together as a unit of 10, which that would then be held. Those 2 units of 5 and 5 are held together to each other with these type of golden hooks on a bluish type of background, and therefore when one would look at them from inside the Mishkan, it would look like the Gemara says kakachovim berikia, stars in the sky, as it is golden hooks with a backdrop of blue material. Okay, Tanu Rabbanon. We learned in Hebrews, Yiriyas etachtonos, the lower tapestries of the Mishkan, shatcheles v'shalagomim v'shetilas shani. They are from these 3 materials of turquoise, purple wool, and telas shani. I think is a type of silk. V'shalsheish, and of cotton. The halyonos, and the upper tapestries. So you have one layer of these type of tapestries, which made up beautiful different colors and coming together. And the upper ones, the alyonis, shalmaiseism, they're made up of threads which were woven together from goat hair. Now, the chachma, which was is referred to in regard to making these tapestries is greater in regard to the upper covering than in regard to that which was of the betachtonis, or the lower covering. Why? The inner betachtonis, by regard to the lower covering, it says, and every woman who had a wisdom of heart would weave it with her hands. But as regard to making the upper tapestries, the overcover of that lower tapestry, it says, the fact here is saying, that the heart raised them, the heart lifted them up in Chachma. That is a stronger expression of Chachma, and therefore the understanding that it took more Chachma, took more skill than making the lower ones. And we learned in the Bryce in the name of Rabbi Nechemia, Shatuf be'izim v'tovu min ha'izim. It was washed while it was attached to the goats, and it was also spun and woven while it was attached to the goats, which that is a much greater chachma to be able to do all those things while it's still attached. And the reason why they did that while it's still attached, on the simple understanding, it is because as soon as one cuts off the hairs of the goat, it somewhat diminishes in its quality, and therefore they wanted to stay at that higher level of quality, and therefore they would get it all prepared while it's still attached. And just to mention a small an additional point which the Rabbi brings in regard to this, that over here we have that it's brought from a living animal. These the tapestries, if they're being made from while they're being attached, it's as if it's being brought from a live animal, from the level of chai, whereas if it would be disconnected, it would be, so to speak, from the level of tzemeach, maybe even daimon. Okay. Now the Gemara is going back to our Mishnah. Shtei guzos terois, that would have two type of balconies that were protruding over the Rishus Harabim, and we said that if a person passes from one balcony to the next balcony, which is one Rishus Yachid to another Rishus Yachid, and there is a Rishus Harabim in between, one is chayiv, as long as it is on the same side of the street, they are on the same, in line with each other. Not if they are opposite with each other. Why? Because that's the way it was in the Mishkan. You had the wagons, and they would pass the beams from one wagon to another wagon, and the wagons were in parallels to each other, and therefore that is how we're learning out that also passing from one Rishus Yachid, which would be from one wagon to another Rishus Yachid, which is another wagon with the Rishus Yachid in the middle, it would be the melacha of passing over. So, Omar Rav Mishum Rabbi Chir. Agorishet tachtehen, underneath the wagons, uveinehen, and in between one wagon and another wagon, right? We're understanding that the wagons will travel in pairs. So you had four wagons. So you have two traveling next to each other, and then another two in front of them next to each other. So the agolis, underneath the agolis, the space which is underneath the actual body of the wagon, ubeinehen, and the area which is between one wagon and another wagon, the space, this is one wagon, another wagon, so this space in between the two, v'tzidehen, and the sides of the wagons. Now, the sides of the wagons here is referring to from the actual body of the wagon itself. You got the rodel of which is holding the wheel, and the thickness of the wheel itself, which sticks out, and obviously it's on both sides of the wagon. So underneath the parallel to that length, the area which is parallel to the width of those wheels, which is taking up, that is also considered a Rishus Harabim. Okay. Omar, that was already mentioned before in yesterday's Amud, which brought up the whole discussion of yesterday of trying to find the open space underneath the wagon where it could be Rosh Hashanah. It was 2 days ago. Omar Rabbi says Rabbi, Bein Agola Lagola, the distance, the space in between one wagon and another wagon, because we said they were traveling in pairs. Kimloi Oirech Agola, that is the same measurement, same distance as the length of the Agola. Right? So this is the wagon. So the driver would be sitting over here, let's say, or the horse is in the front of it. So this is the length of the wagon. This is the width of the wagon. So the length of the wagon is 5 amos. Now, and that is the same distance that is between one wagon and another one, because we said the wagons traveled in twos like this. So this 5 amos is the same measurement as what would be in between how spaced out they were in between while they traveled together in pairs. Okay. Why do I need to have a full 5 amos length of the wagon? But Arbo Falgosagi, seemingly it should be enough to have 4.5. At the best, the way of placing the beams, we spoke yesterday as well, that the beams were 1.5 amos wide and 1 amma thick depth. So an example would be like this over here. This is a beam, it's 1.5 wide, that's 10 tall, 1.5 amma wide, 1 amma thick. So if you're going to have the three, if you're going to have, we had each wagon is carrying in it 12 beams. 12 beams in each wagon. So if you want to pile them up in an efficient way, you'd pile them at this angle, their width facing downwards. You put them with the width facing downwards. It wouldn't be so efficient, at least in the first instance of the way we would think about it, to pile beams on their sides, on the thickness. You generally pack them. You pack them on the wagons like this, and therefore you'd have 4 rows of. Sorry, you'd have 3 rows piling up, 4 going up. So you'd have 4, and then 4. That's right. 4. That has the 12. You have the 12 beams, and each row of the 4 beams is taking up 1.5 amos. So it's 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3 plus another 1.5, 4.5. So the Gemara says, why do you have to have 5? There's extra half for amma, which is not being used up. So for the Gemara, in order that the kroshim should not be squashed next to each other, you want to leave some space in between one pile and another pile. You don't use them up exactly, and therefore they would leave an extra half an amma, so they can have space in between the two, between the 3 piles. Okay. Omar Rava says Rava, Tzidei Agola, Kemeloi Roichav Agola. Now again, back to the wagon. This is a wagon. We said it was 5 long. And how wide is it? So let's see. How long is the width? How wide is the width of the Agola? 2.5 amos. So the wagon is 5 amos long, 2.5 amos wide. Now you have also protrusions for wheels, the small rodel, axle, and with the wheel on one side and on the other side. How much space was the wheels taking up together? Also 2.5, 1.25 this side and 1.25 on this side. That's how much wheel space is. 1.25 here, 1.25 here, together equals 2.5. So the actual width of the body of the wagon is also 2.5. So this is what the Gemara is saying, that the space which the wheels together are taking up, which is 1.25, 2.5, is the same as the actual width of the actual wagon itself, which is 2.5. Again, frankly, why do I need to have 2.5 amas width of the wagon? The amsa or falga sagya. It's enough to have 1.5. Why? Because a person could easily put the wagon, the beams were on the wagon like this. They were like this. Like we said the other day, it was like an airplane. If you could imagine it to be the wings, like coming out, and it was piled up like four and then four, going along. So you don't need to have 2.5 amas for the middle of the beams to be sitting on the wagon. You can have. It could also sit on 1.5, and it will still be okay. So the answer is the Gemara. We want that the beams, that they should sit in place and not move around, and therefore you're giving that extra amma, 2.5 amas, in order they should sit in a stable manner without any moving around at all. Okay. So we worked out why we need to have the full length of 5 amas for of the wagon, in order that there should be the space in between the stacks of the beams, the crushing. And then now we worked out why we need to have this 2.5 width of the actual body of the wagon, in order that they should sit in a settled manner. We know, we have a halacha clear that the Rishus Harabim has to be at least 16 amas wide. If you have a broad pathway that is not 16 amas wide, you will not have the din of Rishus Harabim. And Anan, the Gamrinu Lam Mishkan, and we are learning it out from the Mishkan. Right? All this halachas of the passing and the carrying, the Rishus Harabim, etc., is all learned from the Mishkan, and also the measurement of the Rishus, what it makes up Rishus Harabim, is also learned out from the Mishkan. So how are we coming to this measurement of 16? Seemingly, the Mishkan it was 15, right? Let's see. We have the actual wagon itself took up 5 amas altogether. We said the actual body was 2.5, and then 1.25 is another 2.5. So that's 5. The actual from wheel to wheel of the width of the wagon is 5. And then we said that there is a space of 5 amas in between one wagon and another wagon, because they went in parallels. Right? We said they went in parallels. So you have 5 amas there was in between each one of them. And then the next wagon next to it is another 5 amas wide, wheel to wheel, comes out with 15. So where do we get the measurement of that? Which we know that 16 amas is what makes up the width of Rishus Harabim. And for the Gemara, Amsa Yisera Havai, there was an extra amma on the path which was going along over there. The Havakoi ben Levi, one of the Leviim, was standing. The Chimishtalfi Kroshim, if he would notice that one of the beams was slipping from its place, Hava Nokit Lahu, he would hold it in its place and put it back in straighten it out, that they should not slip out of place. So therefore, indeed, the extra amma brings us to 16 ammas in the Rishus Harabim that was by the midbar, and therefore we come to 16 amos is what makes up the measurement of a Rosh Hashanah. Till here we finished the sugyas of the Mishkan, and now we'll move on to the next mission. Chulias haboy. When one has a pit in the Rosh Hashanah, and the way it used to work is that it used to dig a hole in the ground, and the earth that was being dug out from the hole, it would be piled up at the sides and be used as like a type of fence or a wall around the boy. And also if one has a rock, which is in the Shushabim. Now, if any of these, either the wall which is surrounding the pit or the stone, if it is 10 tefachim high, and it is 4 tefachim wide, so that now is the measurement of a Rishus HaYochid. Rishus HaYochid is any area which is 10 tefachim high or 10 tefachim low, for that matter, going down into the ground, and it has a space of 4 amos, 4 tefachim. So hanoitim lehen, somebody who takes from them, v'hanoisin al gabon, or somebody puts something from the Shus Rabbim onto them. Chayev, he is chayev because of the malacha of taking out from Shus Rabbim onto the Shus HaYochid, which is over here the rock or the wall around the pit, and vice versa. If he takes from the rock or the wall around the pit and then it takes it down, he will be chayev for taking from the Shus HaYochid into Shus Rabbim. If it's lower or smaller than these measurements, potter, then he is exempt because this is not got the measurements which makes up Rosh Hashanah. Okay, we'll start the mission over here with the Gemara. Why does the Mishnah have to talk us about the chulias haboy, the wall going around the pit? Listen, this is learn simply about haboy v'hasela. Why do you have to give an example to teach us the din of Rishus HaYochid of a wall being high 10 tefachim to make Rishus HaYochid? Even if the actual pit itself, if it is got a depth of 10 tefachim and a space within it of 4 tefachim, you've achieved your Rishus HaYochid. So, this Mishnah helps Rabbi Yochanan. The Rabbi Yochanan, boy v'chulyasa mitztarfin lasara, is coming to teach us. Indeed, it's true. We could have actually talked about just the boy itself having those measurements, but the fact that it's giving us this specific case is coming to reinforce the halacha of Rabbi Yochanan that the boy and the wall which is surrounding it combine together to create for us a height or a depth of 10 tefachim. So, if, for example, one would have a pit that goes down only 5 tefachim, and then the wall which one has built around the pit protrudes over the ground and surrounds the pit now at the height of 5 tefachim. So, within that surrounded area of the pit and within those walls, that is all considered to have the measurement of 10 tefachim, and therefore has the din of a Rishus HaYochid. Tanyanam Yachi, and indeed this is actually learned in the Brisa as well. Boy Rishus HaRabim, if one has a pit in the Rishus HaRabim, Amuka Asara Rechava Abba, Ein Memalin Eineno b'Shabbos, one does not fill from it on Shabbos, Ela Imkin Osra Mechitza Gavoya Asar Tefachim, unless that one has made a wall high around it 10 tefachim, and if one has not made this wall around it of 10 tefachim, then ve'ein shoysin emena b'Shabbos, one cannot drink from this boy on Shabbos, and can hichnas laroishe v'ruboy, unless one has put one's whole head and most of one's body inside the hollowness of the bowl of the boy, and the pit and the wall which one is built around it is combining to make up the 10 tefachim to give it the din of Rosh Hashanah. So here we have clearly the Bryce is saying this halacha that a pit and a wall around it combine together to make up a Rosh Hashanah by giving it the measurements of 10 tefachim high.